When I find a name that means 8888, I don't believe it. I have to check it several times. But I find something that confirms it. As you know, the 8888 is the law of the 8888 is the one that confirms the exact reconstruction of the Great Pyramid. When I found that the four edges measured exactly 218, and that confirmed the name of that primordial God one, that I remind you that it is documented in ancient Egypt as Nezarua in the 4th millennium before Christ. Of course, I scrubbed my eyes, but that time I was absolutely conscious that I had found this name that initially had seemed incredible to me.
Our friends of Rediscovering Our Origins, what we promised is dead. We promised that we would make an encore, that we would make a kind of tiny extra chapter in which we asked you to register in a form. You have done it. Thanks for the support. As always, the signs of affection in terms of comments to the registration, to everything that concerns to follow us and to be supporting us have been fantastic. And as I said, what we promised is dead. And here we are to reveal to you the most important of the research process. Around the first book, Miquel Perez Sanchez Plau's first book, about what he started with that doctorate and that he reached spectacular conclusions. Here we have the two most spectacular conclusions of all the research, and right here and now we are going to unveil them to you. So without further ado, Miquel, how are you doing? Hello?
Yes. Hello, good afternoon. How are you?
Well, let's reveal them. Let's go for it. They're surely eager and have been waiting for this moment. So here we go. We have the two numbers, 892 and 888, which, as has been made clear throughout the previous 10 podcasts, are key. Are the two most sacred numbers for ancient Egypt, one related to the Ns of Rua, and the other related to the mother civilization. Where do you want to start?
Well, I think both are very important, but let's start with the mother civilization. And that we have seen that the so-called land of the primitives in the walls of the temple of Fu, let's remember that what is explained there is that there was an island that sank in the sea, and that its inhabitants, its few survivors, especially 7 wise men, were the ones who brought to Egypt the wisdom of this mother civilization, of this land of the primitive people. At this time, I have to ask you, and I have to ask our listeners, if the story of an island that sinks into the sea, either it sounds or it doesn't sound.
It sounds a lot to me. I have already done it, and I have it very clear in my head.
Well, because indeed what you have in your head is the truth. Or the number 892 corresponds to the nominal value of the word Atlantis, which means in our language, the Atlantis. This you will understand that at the moment of finding it for me was an extraordinary surprise. Because I had done research with a graduate in Greek, 6,500 words, and the direct values of these words. And none of the 892, until it occurred to me to put in the word Atlantis. And indeed, some 892. Let's see the letter alpha. Has a value of 1. The letter tau has a value of 300. The letter lambda has a value of 30. Again, the letter alpha has a value of 1. The letter mi, value 50. The letter Tau value 300, the letter iota value 10, and the other one, the letter sigma value 200, Atlantis. The sum, if you check it, is 892. And this for me is of exceptional importance because it is the first time that it is demonstrated that Atlantis, beyond the Platonic myth, could be a reality. And the fact that in the Great Pyramid of the number 892, it appears again and again and again and again and again, proves without any doubt that the reference is to this lost city in antiquity. In antiquity, the whole process of research shows that this city sank into the sea in the year 3530, to be more exact, from the concept of the death of Osiris, and that Osiris was the personification of Atlantis. It happened on the 3rd of October of minus 3530 of the Julian calendar. That means that the Great Pyramid is the memorial monument commemorating the millennium of Atlantis, of the destruction of Atlantis, because as we have seen in the previous video podcast, it turns out that the Great Pyramid is inaugurated on the 3rd of October of the year minus 2530, as shown by the alignments of the stellar canal, specifically the southern stellar canal of the Queen's Chamber with the planet C. But therefore, we have absolutely scientific data, not speculations, not speculative speculations, that the Great Pyramid is the commemorative monument of the destruction of Atlantis, because we have also found the date of the 3rd of October of minus 3530 as the date of the Great Cataclysm. Through the data that Plutarch gives us about the death of Osiris, Osiris is the personification of Atlantis. The death of Osiris represents the destruction of Atlantis. In case we have any doubts about what I am saying, there is a mathematical relationship that you cannot imagine the surprise that I had when I found it, because there was a moment in which it occurred to me that what could the sarcophagus in the king's chamber, that is in the king's chamber, because I was convinced, as some other Egyptologists were, that it never contained the mortal remains of Khufu of the pharaoh Cheops. Then I tried the reconstruction of the sarcophagus, because I say reconstruction because we were missing one piece, which was the lid, and I tried with the measurement of the lid of the sarcophagus that would correspond, but I lacked the thickness. So I took the one of the sarcophagus of Mycerinus, that it is perfectly documented of which measure it had. And I imagined that for a question of stonemasonry work, the sarcophagus of Mycerinus could have copied the detailed system of the lid of the sarcophagus of Cheops. Then I gave him the measure of the sarcophagus with the thickness of the sarcophagus of Mycerinus, and by dividing, to check if there was any relation with the volume of the Great Pyramid, the total volume of the Great Pyramid with the volume of the reconstructed sarcophagus of Cheops, I found an absolutely exceptional surprise that I advanced already in a previous video podcast. The proportion is exactly 892,000. What does this mean? It means that if we were to take 892,000 sarcophagi, you have the measurement of the sarcophagus of Cheops, the volume would be exactly the volume of the Great Pyramid of Cheops. Of course, the question is, what does 892,000 sarcophagi mean? Well, with what we have seen, we already have the answer. 892 means Atlantis. The Atlantis and 1,000 are the 1,000 years that elapsed since the end of Atlantis. From the end of Atlantis to the inauguration of the Great Pyramid that reconstructs the knowledge of Atlantis.
We already have one. We have already released it. Is that I am very relieved too, because it had to be said.
It had to be said, but it had to be explained.
It had to be explained, and it has been explained very well. Maybe to finish it off, and I wanted to ask you, we have played it a little bit of scratching in other podcasts, I think 2 times at least one. What about him?
Yes, well, this is the question that I asked myself from the very beginning. With the Greek, what happens is what I have already explained on other occasions, is that until now it was believed that it was from the year 1500 before Christ, therefore it would have 3,500 years old. And instead the Great Pyramid is from 2,500, therefore here there would be a clear anachronism here. That's why I went to the university and talked to the most eminent professor of Greek language at the University of Barcelona at that time was Carlos Morales. Unfortunately, he died. And I gave him the thesis and asked him to read it, and I asked him to join my thesis tribunal as a member of the thesis tribunal, as a member of the thesis tribunal. As a member of the thesis tribunal, the truth is that I had found so many things and so much cross-reference data that it was very difficult to understand them if the Greek had not been used by the architects of the Great Pyramid. The truth is that Carlos, as I have already mentioned in some other occasion, read it to him. And he told me, "Look, Miguel, I don't know how, but it works." And that answer to... Well, the answer was followed by the following question. Today he wants to be in the thesis tribunal? Of course he does. Yes, and well, the thesis tribunal had the utmost generosity towards me. The result was an excellent, outstanding cum laude. And that means that all the members of the tribunal were in total agreement, including Carlos Miralles, to whom I am eternally grateful to him, because he was an important support to solve one of the doubts in the chronological doubt. Then the only way to explain it is that the architect or architects of the Great Pyramid, which I am more and more convinced that it was a posthumous work of Imhotep, a project of Imhotep, in which surely what he would do would be an overall project of surely not the second book I demonstrated, a global project of the 3 pyramids of Giza, including the pyramid of Djedefre, the son of Cheops. In that global project is permanently used the Greek geometry, and of course, curiously, the name of Imhotep represents, if it meant, the one who comes in peace. The number of Imhotep, the 737, responds to the word Musis, which is his name in Greek. Therefore, the question is, Imhotep did not have a huge Greek influence, because they do not begin to have any doubts, and that could be the explanation. And therefore we are going to have to rethink what the antiquity of the language is,
because it alters a lot the known paradigm with respect to the origins of the Greek language, which is the branch of the mysticism of the Indo-European, if at least that is what the current studies say. But seeing this, well, we have to rethink the same.
What is certain is that the multiple appearance of the number of 892 and the number of 888 in the Great Pyramid, responding to 2 words that are absolutely significant in order to understand what that land of the primitives and that mother civilization could have been. I have no doubt that everything I have found is too powerful for it to be a simple coincidence. It is impossible that it is a coincidence.
Okay, we already have one, and now let's go for the other one. We already have the meaning of the 892. Now let's go for the meaning of the 8888, which is, as you have been commenting us, the video podcast, is the reference to the primordial god, the Netherua, of the ancient Egyptians. What does engematry mean? What is the name of the 888, or...
You see that when I find the name that means 8888, I do not believe it. I have to check it several times. But I find something that confirms it. As you know, the 8888 is the law of the 8888, is the one that confirms the exact reconstruction of the Great Pyramid. But it is that when I find the meaning of that name. I realize a posteriori that its first 3 letters out of the 6 that compose it turns out to be 218, and it so happens, that the 4 edges of the Great Pyramid rising up to the sky measured exactly 218.000 in the reconstruction carried out, that I remind you that the law of 888 demonstrates that the reconstruction is absolutely exact, because the modification of 1 meter of a real cubit, be it cubic or linear squares, would make it impossible to comply with the law of 880. That is, in this context, the law of 880. 80, that is to say, in this context, when the 4 edges measured exactly 218, and that they confirmed the name of that primordial god one, which I remind you is documented in ancient Egypt as Nezerwop in the 4th millennium before Christ. Of course, I scrubbed my eyes, but that time I was absolutely conscious that I had found this name that initially had seemed incredible to me because of its anachronism, not very well. This name that came to us in our era, it turns out to be in the author of the church you are, which is a Jew that is written in the Greek language in in Greek language in the Ptolemaic Alexandria. Therefore, 3 centuries before our era. That said, when I start working on this name, the first thing that comes to my mind are the acronyms of the 200 1800 meters that repeated 4 times the name of that divinity going up towards the sky. But you will wonder, but let's see, we had not agreed that the Egyptians were polytheistic. The Egyptians were polytheists. What sense has a primordial God one in the 4th millennium before Christ? We are going to see polytheists and through many local gods. But instead, it is as if we say, for example, that Catholicism is polytheistic because we have the different saints of the different cities.
The virgins.
Or the virgins, not the Virgin of Montserrat, patron saint of Catalonia, the Virgin of La Merced, or Santa Eulalia, patron saint of Barcelona, San Isidro, patron saint of Madrid, etc. Well, and it is clear that the Catholic religion is not polytheistic at all in religion. That said, when I began to study, when I started to see what the first 3 acronyms were of the name of the primordial God one, I found that they were very familiar to me. They are a Y, i.e. an iota, an eta, and a sigma. If you don't know Greek, they might not tell you too many things. But if you transform them into Latin, they are 1 and 1 iota, which is 1 and 1 and Latin. 1. Una eta, which is our H, and a sigma, which is our S and HS. You find it in all the Christian churches because it turns out that the name of the one God, primordial, of ancient Egypt documented in the 4th millennium is written in Greek as HS or us, which we would pronounce it, and they pronounce it as Jesus. The name of the primordial God one, friends, see, is Jesus. As strange as it may appear, it is Jesus.
Well, I don't even know what to say. I already knew it, but it's that every time I think about it. I'm not Catholic, I am not religious, but I love the figure of Jesus. He seems to me to be one of the most incredible historical figures in the history of mankind. He leaves behind a legacy that is not to be forgotten. A most incredible historical figures in the history of mankind. He leaves a legacy of common sense. Of a common sense and of a way to treat each other among human beings. That is the way it should be in the end for me, that no one gets angry, please, but the dogmatized by the different churches of Christian origin that have been transforming either Catholicism or the different evangelical Lutheran movements, etc. I'm not going to judge anyone, but for me they are the most incredible figures in the history of humanity. But of course, I don't know how the hell we contextualize this, Michael, is that here we are already in diapers. Not if you go away or I
was left in peace, if you are going to look at it. Don't you think that from the moment I did it, there was a very, very long process of reflection in the first place with respect to what you are saying? For me, Christianity is an absolutely groundbreaking religion in the context in which it was born in the Roman Empire. In respect to Judaism also, because it turns around an absolutely restrictive religion like Judaism, which is full of very specific and very restrictive dogmas with respect to people. I don't see myself capable of judging any religion. I tell you frankly, and I do not see myself capable of judging any religion because all of them have made absolutely exceptional contributions to the history of mankind, even though there can also be of humanity, although there can also be readings that are not so positive. I agree with that. But like any human work, it has several faces. If I return to Christianity, what I have to tell you is that for me, essentially what it is a religion that through the ethical component that it transmits, guarantees the survival of the human being. Let's see. Imagine yourself in the 1st century before Christ or in the 1st century after Christ. Human life was worthless. When the cities were taken in assault by the armies they put to the knife, those people who could not be useful to them, they enslaved the others. And from then on, the human being, life, was nothing. What is the Christian message? You and I are brothers and sisters. And I love you as my brother, and you love me as I am as your brother. Therefore, we respect each other. We respect each other's lives. And therefore, we guarantee the survival of the species. You see, in this context, the image comes to me from the Old Testament of the New Testament forgiveness, in which the archangel appears to Mary and says to her by name, Jesus, give him the name Jesus. As I have said before, Jesus the Syracuse is the name of the Jewish Hellenist working in Alexandria and writing in the 3rd century before, in the 3rd century BC in the church. This is one of the books of the Bible, therefore. And that is, Jesus is a much older name than Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus of Nazareth, what happens that we do not have information about it? So and this is history, and the data I have given is also history, because evidently the 1888 is absolutely present in the Great Pyramid. And it's confirmed by the height of the edges, because it could be another name. And instead, the edges tell you 218 tell you, and H is what we find again and again in churches. The initials of the name of Jesus is not clear. The reflections. Let's ask ourselves a question. If we find the advanced scientific civilization in the past, would it not be possible, not to say probable, that this scientific civilization incorporated a philosophy of life who advanced? That is to say, the question is, could it be that Christianity was the heir of one of a primordial Atlantean, in this case, primordial Atlantean that arrived to Egypt with the name of God? And that this name was the one that survived, but did not survive in other religions, such as, for example, the case of Judaism, because they considered that it was the name of the God who had punished them. So the question is, it may be for that reason that the Orthodox Jews, for a long time, it was difficult for them to pronounce again the name of Yahweh. That's why the name of Yahweh. Or what Yahweh, when they ask him what name he has, he says, I am the one I am see. A reflection. I write in Hebrew the name of Yahweh. Nominal value of 26 applied the Hebrew geometry to it logically. Ordinal value 26. Value reduced to 17. 2 plus 6, 8, 2 plus 6, 8, 1 plus 7. 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, 8. But I write the name of Jesus in Hebrew, and it is Yahweh, and the exact same thing occurs. The numbers of the nominal value, of the ordinal value, and of the reduced value, all three are reduced to 8, therefore. That 888 is in the essence of the name Yahweh, and it is in the essence of the name Yeshua in Hebrew. If we go to Egypt, it turns out that the God of wisdom and sciences, is written with the zeta O, or we would write the not or micro before H, and that and that and that has of values, of ordinal values, in this case 8, 15. 8, but the question is, 8 was the city of Tot, 15 the province of Tot. It would not be an evolution of 8888 that would be pronounceable, because if not, instead of saying sos, which would be the pronunciation, they would say tres zetas. That leads us to, if you will allow me, let me introduce an element of humor. It takes us back to our comics, in which we have 3 zetas. When someone sleeps, the question is, could it be that primordial civilization, or the conception as the Neter Oe of the ancient Egypt, was understood from the ancient Egypt? You are not talking about a primordial one God. who somehow sleeps in the sense that he creates and then allows the created beings to exercise their free will. Beings can exercise their free will and does not intervene in them. Is a question to ask oneself. Notice that we are in the field of speculation, but it is that where we have arrived, we have no other alternative. Let's go a little bit further. When we take the word Jesus, we would associate it in Christianity with its foundation. The question is the Christian religion, because it is not called Jesuism and it is called Christianity. Maybe Jesusism had a resonance of a previous religion, perhaps, but if we write the word Christos, Christos Christo, nulla la exlar, that is the sila rho, and the iota exer, and that is in the symbol of Christ. It turns out that the first two letters add up to 700. 700 is equal to 8.88 multiplied 3 times by itself. If we add the iota, it is 710, and this is 8.92 multiplied 3 times by itself. That is 8.88 cubed, the first two letters of the word Christ. 8.92 cubed, the first 3 letters of the word Christo. And it turns out that the word Christ is 1,480. If you take the calculator, you will see that 888 multiplied by 5 and divided by 3 is 1,480. That is to say, the word Christ, which means the anointed one, it has a direct geometric relationship with the word Jesus. It is in a ratio of 5:3. And if you write, and it is his Christ, Jesus Christ in Greek, there we have the number 2,368, which by the same proportion is in proportion 8:3 with respect to 888, that is to say, the words Jesus Christ and Jesus Christ are directly associated through the geometria, through the relation 358, which are also the 3rd, 4th, and 5th numbers of the Fibonacci series, which defines the number phi, which defines the divine proportion, that is to say, in the very essence of Christianity. In the very essence of Christianity is the geometry,
Hey, well then we have already let it out, that's it. You have been left alone, Mikhail. Well,
the truth is that it is not a matter of staying calm, it is a matter of trying to explain with the greatest rationality fact that emotionally directly affects our spiritual formation. Our spiritual formation in our culture, in our Christian civilization. Of course, it is difficult to explain, but it was essential to explain it. And in the second book, I go much more deeply into it, in such a way that I hope to be able to explain it even better.
Speaking of the second book, we have already discussed it in other podcasts. This first book is part of a larger effort, of a larger publishing effort made up of 4 more books that Mikhail has already prepared, so it's no secret that we have done all this. Well, it's no secret that we have done all this, an enormous effort, especially on Mikhail's part, to try to make it last longer and to make it materialize, and the truth is that we are getting closer and closer to achieving it because you are helping us a lot. Thanks to all the support that you are showing us, so we are very grateful, because obviously this is the objective that we are pursuing with all of this. Having said this, Mikhail,
we are closing now, and while it has been a real pleasure all this time we have been here doing this,
but hey, we are going to continue producing. For a hypothetical, not a hypothetical, a reality of seasons with more content, we will see what we have prepared. We are going to tell you surprise, and we will continue working together, Mikhail, to try that. Our listeners and viewers continue enjoying all your research and continue knowing more about this reality, because this is a reality.
So thank you very much, Mark, to you and to all the team, of course. And thank you very much to you for being there and for giving us your support until the next one.
Thanks, guys. See you in the next one. In the contents, especially SegWhite, linked to our social networks there. We will continue to post content and also continue working on more content that we will be developing, okay? Thank you very much, and a big hug until the next one, until another one.